We'll go ahead and get the study session underway, and I don't know who I'm turning it over to, but I'll look at City Manager Mike Sprague.
Yeah, I've got a few introductory comments and then I'll turn it over to Jacob Wood, the Deputy City Manager. Very seldom do we have a vendor come and present as part of a study session. And this may feel a little bit like a sales pitch on their part, but what I would tell you is we've been in conversations with Ken Olson and others from Enterprise about this approach for quite some time, vetting it just in general, as well as how it might work for us. And so we felt like it had enough merit that it was worth pursuing and bringing to you in study session, given kind of the breadth of the topic, with the intention of then bringing it back to you with the staff recommendation to proceed. So this is kind of more of an educational opportunity than a sales pitch, but it ultimately, I think, will come with a city staff recommendation. And Jacob has been with them every step of the way and has prepared the study session. So I'll turn it over to him.
All right, Jacob Wood, Deputy City Manager. Whoa, that's loud today. I'm just going to share a couple of slides here and just give a real brief overview. The first slide here, I just wanted to kind of highlight, over the last couple of years, we've had a lot of conversations about vehicles and equipment and, the fact that we're really not adequately funding vehicles and equipment across the city. At this point, we've been spending about $930,000 out of the sales tax sub-CIP. You can see that is right down here. We have a couple of other line items or places where we purchase vehicles and equipment. We do that out of the utilities fund, the sanitation fund. You'll see it looks like utilities, we spend $408,000. And I will tell you that that's not all just vehicles. That's a lot of equipment, pumps, replacement pumps, that sort of thing. Most of that money is actually spent on that type of thing. So while $1.9 million may look like it's a lot, it really doesn't come close to scratching the surface of what we really need to spend on vehicles and equipment. The next slide is the 2021 requested. These are the requests that were unfunded as part of the sub-CIP. So you can see what we didn't fund totals $1.3 million. So there's a lot of requests going on out there that we are just unable to fulfill because we don't have the funds to do it. And this is just kind of, it shows the same picture. This is the 2022 request. We've got $1.9 million worth of requests and about $900,000 or $1 million to spend on those vehicles and equipment. So over the last couple of years, we've been really trying to look at ways that we can kind of try and affect this vehicle and equipment replacement, see if there's any, just anything that we can do to kind of take it to the next level, take it to the next step, maybe with planning, kind of trying to just make sure that we can address some of the problems that we've had. And when we started to kind of find a solution, we looked at enterprise fleet management. This is something that kind of, the county actually was looking at it at some point, and we got introduced to Enterprise about almost a year ago. We started looking at this program, and then we started having conversations with Ken Olson about 7 months ago. We've done a lot of work to look at this program to see if it's something that would work for the city. We've had this looked at by Jim Teutsch, our Public Works Director, John Dewar, our Fleet Manager. We've had Debbie and I and different department heads. We've kind of all looked at the program to see if it's something that we thought might work. And so we're at the point today where we feel like this could be a solution for the city. And so we've invited Ken Olson to come and just kind of provide an overview of how the program works. And then we'll have a discussion about what the city commission thinks as we move forward. So Ken Olson is from Enterprise, and he will take the mic, and it's all yours.
Thank you, Jacob. Appreciate you guys having me today. Also wanted to thank the team. We've had as they mentioned, we've had a lot of conversations up to this point. We've chatted over the past year in regards to this conversation. So really appreciate that. They've done a great job from a due diligence standpoint of analyzing all aspects of the program up to this point. So we see that often, but they've done an extremely good job. Wanted to start today by really just giving an overview of who we are and kind of what we do. And you're probably familiar with Enterprise Holdings, our enterprise rental car company. We are the same company, and really on the fleet management side, what we do is we leverage all of the tools, the resources, the people, and everything that we have, from operating the largest fleet in the country, operate a couple million vehicles in all of our fleet vehicles. And we help entities like yourself with small to medium-sized fleets. So our niche is really 20 to 500 vehicles. And most of our government clients like yourself fall right into that niche. So we work with entities like yours to reduce the cost and bring some efficiencies to the table. From a structure standpoint, my role is really getting the partnerships established. So analyzing what you do, building out the financial strategy, as we'll look at here in a little, and really getting the partnerships in place, going through these council meetings, contracts, et cetera. As the partnership goes live, we have a local account team. Justin Harper will be your client strategy manager or account manager, who will come out and meet with you on a very regular basis. And we will meet with the department heads regularly, analyzing budgets and analyzing their needs and making sure we have everything in place. So from that perspective, really at the end of the day, we are certainly not here to lease you some vehicles or sell you some vehicles. We're truly looking for a partnership. And that's why in the analysis that we're going to look at today, we forecast it out over the next 10 years. And we are extremely customer service based and relationship based. I wanted to walk through a couple different structures of entities that currently partner with us. You may be familiar with the Unified Government, Wyandotte County, City of Independence, Missouri, Prairie Village, Lenexa, Shawnee County. Some of these entities are very similar to your structure, where they only use us for what I consider the depreciation side. So they purchase or acquire the vehicles from us. They leverage our equity lease from a funding perspective, and then they have us sell the vehicles on the back end. They also use us for upfit and logistics and others. But with all those entities, they don't use us for some of the operating expenses, the maintenance program, the fuel programs, et cetera. But their operational expenses do go down through this type of a structure. Some of the other entities, City of Branson, Missouri, Arkansas City, Valley Center, Raymore, Smithville, et cetera, they use us for absolutely everything. So the reason I share a couple of these different entities is that our program is designed around your entity, your budgets, and your operational structures. And it certainly can grow organically as things change, right? In our last committee meeting that we had, we talked a little about electric vehicles and the police being on a little different structure than some of the other vehicles. So a lot of flexibility in this program, and it's very customizable, and it certainly grows as the partnership develops over the years. Another situation that I wanted to explain, we've implemented a structure where a lot of our entities are leveraging a 1-year model. So they only operate the vehicle for 1 year, right? Which in most cases, that's certainly not the case with a lot of our government clients. And I like to explain this model because it really paints a picture of how the program can work. So if we take a standard F-250 that we have outside, more than likely, you all as a government entity buy that vehicle extremely well, right? Leveraging your government incentives. So where you or I would pay $45,000 approximately, you as a government entity buy that truck for $30,000. We fund it through our equity lease model for 12 months at a very low depreciation rate, down to around $25,000. And then we'll sell it for you on your behalf for an estimated $35,000. So from a budget perspective, we're keeping your budget as low as possible, only paying for the portion that we're going to use, and then leveraging Enterprise's resale abilities, as we sell a couple million vehicles every year, to sell that vehicle on your behalf after 1 year. Some of our entities through that structure are actually having a $0 budget for that given vehicle, right? We sell a vehicle on the front end, leverage that money to pay for that next 12 months, sell that vehicle after 12 months, return the equity back to the city. That structure is not going to be applied for all the vehicles in the fleet. The police will certainly be on a longer structure due to the aftermarket equipment, due to their mileage patterns, et cetera, but it will work for a lot of the parks, public works, et cetera. Every vehicle will have its own structure, own mileage pattern, and that's where the relationship comes in. We will analyze it right off the bat with the data that we have, and then we will continuously analyze it as the partnership grows. Any questions from that perspective with what I've covered so far? Okay. Jacob, if you'd pull up that fleet profile sheet. So in this information is also in your synopsis packets. And I'm not going to walk through the entire synopsis. It's really just an overview of the program, includes the analysis and some references and some other details. But this is the data that we've put together, and the team provided 151 vehicles and VIN numbers and odometers to us. And we built this out. There's another worksheet that we will work with in the future that gets a little bit more into the weeds, but really just wanted to paint a high level picture of what we're operating currently today. So this on this fleet profile worksheet, you can see the different vehicle classes. There's 151 vehicles that we're analyzing. We're right at 10 years of age for average age of vehicle. We're right under 10,000 miles per year from an average basis. Some of your public works vehicles are going to have 4,000 or 5,000. Police are a little bit higher, but on average, you're right in line with most of our government clients at 10,000 miles. If you look in the top right-hand corner, the replacement criteria there, we've implemented a structure for over the next 5 years with this criteria to implement the program. So for example, in year one, you can see there's 76 vehicles that are over 10 years of age or over 100,000 miles. So forth over the next 5 years. We've analyzed 10 vehicles that are underutilized. And in our last committee meeting, we had some discussions where there might be more than that, right? And there's certainly going to be some growth over the years as well. So this is just a very high level model at this point, and through the relationship that will certainly change and grow over the years. I really like to point out the bottom section there. And really, these are just where the different vehicles fall from an age perspective. So you have 68 vehicles that are over 10 years of age. And we've mapped out some of the safety features in the synopsis for you that falls into that category. But when I'm analyzing this on the front end and getting these partnerships together, if there was a $0 savings opportunity to move those 68 vehicles, and quite frankly, some of the from 2012 to 2018, to shift those vehicles into the first 4 years at a $0 savings opportunity, we would absolutely recommend that, right? More efficient. There's a lot of soft costs that we're not talking about here from an operational perspective with the different departments, along with the safety, the morale, and all of that. And as we can see in the next analysis, there's going to be a savings opportunity. And in your case, there's a significant savings opportunity to implement this structure. Any questions on any of the numbers on this document here? We take this criteria and the implementation structure, and we analyze that in the next fleet analysis here. And really, the top section there is the different assumptions that are going into the modeling. Taking those 151 vehicles down to the 141 vehicles. We've got your current maintenance cost in there, and then the proposed enterprise maintenance cost. We have the fuel cost from your current fleet, as well as the new vehicles. And one thing to highlight on this analysis is we try to be extremely conservative. And we've also redesigned this model a few times with your team to make sure that it's your numbers and that we are being very, very conservative. And typically we beat these analysis. For example, if the price of fuel rises to $3 per gallon instead of $2 per gallon, there's going to be a larger savings opportunity by the more fuel efficient vehicles. Over the next 10 years, we're confident that there's going to be a greater savings opportunity than 20% that we have implemented in this. If you think about electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles, and some of those types of vehicles that are coming into play, there's certainly going to be a greater savings opportunity than simply 20%. Same with your maintenance expenses. We've got your police in this. We've got some of your more medium duty chassis style vehicles. Are through the structure that we're implementing and the lower amount of years that we're implementing, our maintenance costs are going to be lower than this as well. So try to be extremely conservative. To walk you through the numbers here really quick, the average line there, the yellow or orange bar, is trying to show what we are currently doing today from a city perspective. So you can see we have 151 vehicles that we own. We have no vehicles leased through enterprise. We purchase all of our vehicles today. For the 9 vehicles, that comes out to $382,000 approximately. And that's just from a historical perspective, right? You're going to have years where it's much higher than this and years where it's lower than this as well. But historically, on average, that's your cost. There's no lease expense yet. The equity from those 9 vehicles that you're selling every year, your oldest 9 vehicles on average is bringing something, right? These are 20-year-old vehicles, not bringing a ton, but it's bringing something back. We're showing in this model. Your maintenance costs there, your fuel expenses. And if we add all those columns together, your current fleet budget today on average is the $851,000. So as we implement this enterprise model and we get going in year 1 or 2021 there, we've decreased the size of the fleet to 141 vehicles. We now have 76 vehicles that we're acquiring from enterprise based upon that replacement criteria that you saw on the last page. There is still the 65 vehicles that is currently city-owned vehicles. We now have 76 on lease. Your purchase cost goes away there as we're not paying cash for the vehicles in this model. We now have a lease expense from enterprise for those 76 vehicles. The equity, we're selling those 76 vehicles on your behalf day 1, essentially, in this model is what we're analyzing. And we're getting that equity out of that fleet. We're leasing the vehicles for 12 months here in this case. And then the equity leased for some of those vehicles as we sell them after 12 months is coming back in the equity lease column. Your maintenance cost starts to go down because we have a segment of the maintenance on the enterprise model and a segment on your current city model. Your fuel starts to go down as we implement the more fuel efficient vehicles. And then we get our fleet budget for year 1. If we take your average current fleet budget and we subtract the year 1 budget from enterprise, our net cash column is the savings or the cost opportunity there for that given year. So if we add that net cash column together for over the next 10 years, there's over a $2 million savings opportunity by implementing this type of structure. There's a ton of numbers on that document. I walked through it very quick. We've had a lot of conversations together, building this model and analyzing this model. So I don't expect you to fully understand everything, but I want to make sure, really at the end of the day here, from a high level perspective, what we were trying to show is that we're going from a 16-year cycle to a 3-year cycle, and there's absolutely a savings opportunity.
Few observations I would throw in. In all honesty, we were pretty skeptical of the fuel savings numbers, but between Jim Teutsch and Jacob, they spoke with other communities on this program and confirmed as a percentage, they were experiencing the fuel savings that Enterprise was projecting for us. The other thing that Ken touched on a little bit, but our maintenance on a vehicle that we're going to own for a year may not even include tires at that point. It might be brakes and oil changes, and where right now we're doing stem to stern, bumper to bumper maintenance as the need arises. So I think we are optimistic that there's savings opportunities there.
And there would just part of the fleet would be turned annually, correct? You were saying police cars and some of those would
Absolutely
have it like a 3-year life?
Yes. And in this model, we have everything 12, 24, 36, 48, all the way up to 60 months. So you can imagine a dump truck or utility bed, 350, 450, 550 will certainly be ran longer. And we even have the flexibility to go out longer than that 60-month term if we need to, or get out sooner. Right now, a lot of our clients today are getting out of the vehicles much sooner. Just because the market that we're in, you may have heard in the news and everything else, the used vehicle market is extremely strong. So if we can implement this structure, get the new vehicles, we're going to see very strong returns on that equity own and equity lease column over the next few years.
And these projected savings are not just assuming everything turns over in 12 months. It's the distribution that they plan.
And I notice from like 25 through 30, the lease amount remains constant. Is that doable?
So this model is certainly high level, right? And we're going to have years that we're going to extend out the vehicles out longer than 12 months for that 12-month model. And there's going to be vehicles that come back. So no, that's not realistic to where it's exactly that. We're looking at this today from no inflation. Vehicle prices are going to rise, which we've had a lot of discussion on that as well. We're just looking at it high level at this time. But once we're fully implemented, our costs are going to start to get fixed, especially from a maintenance and a fuel perspective. But one thing that I will say to that point is we work with your team from a budget perspective, and we are always going to provide them with the tools that they need to design and build the model and request what their budget dollars are. And really, that's one of the biggest benefits to our government clients is the budget reduction, right? We're more efficient vehicles at a lower budget cost. And that's
Well,
really
with newer vehicles, your maintenance cost should be significantly less too, I would think.
absolutely.
I think one of the other opportunities here is that right now, kind of the way that we've been operating, because we haven't really been spending a whole lot of money on fleet, we are handing vehicles down. So we may have a vehicle that's not workable for one department so we may send an F-250 over to the Parks Department from another department, and it's maybe not the right vehicle to be in that form of use. So this gives us the opportunity to get the right equipment where we need it at the right time. So we may have some vehicles that are out there in our fleet that are just outsized. They're not what we need, and we can get exactly what we do need, and maybe have some savings on that end as well.
I think the other thing that we're seeing is vehicle requests get denied, and it just forces the department to keep that vehicle in the fleet. And it doesn't necessarily eclipse the purchase price, but it balloons the maintenance cost because we just have to keep it running.
So in this case, the departments wouldn't really request we would basically set up a schedule, and they would know what that schedule is, whether we're rolling.
There would be
vehicles.
conversations with the departments about what do they use the vehicle for, both in terms of function as well as frequency and those type of things. And then there'd be a joint decision about what's the right vehicle for that purpose. But yes, I view this as fleet management consulting services to help us manage that fleet proactively rather than reactively.
Yeah, I was somewhat surprised that the average mileage on a vehicle is less than 10,000 a year. I mean, that ought to help I call trade-in value for lack of a better word, if you're trading something in every 2 to 3 years.
Right.
Yeah. And you're spot on, right? You buy the vehicle better than anyone. You put 5,000 to 10,000 miles on most of the units, and then Enterprise is selling it for you after 12 months, giving you that money back, right? And most times we see a profit with the more light duty style SUVs and trucks.
I do want to mention that this is 1 ton and below. So our bigger equipment, our trash trucks, our fire trucks, ambulances, those sorts of things, they're not in this list at all. So just to point that out.
And it does not include mowers, which is another challenge.
Tried to get them to do mowers, but
They were-
Are there any, not to be the negative one up here, any changes in world events that slow down the used car market as far as unloading the vehicles?
Yeah. So
3 years
right
down the
now
road?
we're seeing vehicles being sold faster than ever. Our team, if they can get their hands on a vehicle, we're selling it very, very rapidly. Typically, it's about 28 days on average the Enterprise sells your fleet vehicles for you. But right now it's even a little bit quicker than that, with the exception of logistic challenges due to COVID, right? But you're absolutely spot on from a new perspective. Getting the vehicles is taking much longer right now. As there's microchip shortages, foam shortages, rubber shortages. So we're seeing very lengthy lead times on the new vehicles that we're ordering from the manufacturers, which is one of the benefits of this program. We get that information right off the bat, and we're advising our clients right off the bat to order this segment of vehicles because of what's going to happen on their used vehicles that we're selling on their behalf. So right now, quite frankly, the model works better than ever because of the market the way it is. But there are a lot of challenges that are coming from the manufacturers right now.
Just out of curiosity, do you sell these to other let's say, governmental agencies or just regular used car, private?
Yeah, so we've got a couple different channels of how we sell the vehicles. For the vehicles that are leased through enterprise that we're selling on your behalf at term or whenever we sell those units, typically they're going direct to our wholesale and franchise buyers that are buying all of our rental vehicles, for example, right? And the same folks that are selling all of our rental vehicles are selling your vehicles as well, which is one of the benefits. We're not buying these vehicles from you. We're selling them on your behalf. And typically we're coming in about 8 to 15% above the industry average of the auction value, bringing very strong returns. And that's the resale market is one of the ways that we help our government clients very aggressively.
Thank you.
Approximately how long have some of these other communities been using enterprise to do their fleet management?
Yeah, so Enterprise has been around for 60 to 65 years now. And we've been doing this for that long. We actually started on the fleet management side. We jumped into the government. We've been doing work with government agencies for many years, but really about 5 to 10 years ago, we started working with the emergency response vehicles. And that has escalated this program throughout the country extremely aggressively on the government space, and it's by far our fastest growing sector. Lenexa has been with us for almost 10 years, I want to say. Raytown School District, 10 years plus. So a lot of those agencies have been around there. Before 10 years, our Kansas City office was fairly light in the government space, but we've grown very, very rapidly over the past 5 to 10 years.
Ken may be planning to get to this point later, but they also provide assistance in terms of what he calls upfitting with equipment. You might touch on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a couple different channels of how we get the vehicles upfitted, especially for your police vehicles and whatnot. A lot of the units will go through a ship through process. So we'll order the vehicle direct from the manufacturer. It will go through a vendor's location and then get delivered here locally to one of the local dealers ready to go, right? If that is not the case, or we want to use a different vendor, the vehicle will get delivered. Our team or that vendor will have that vehicle. It will get delivered to a local dealer, and then it will get transferred to a upfitter. We can capitalize that cost into the lease, or we can bill that out to you. But Enterprise is handling the logistics, the payment process, and making it as efficient for your team as possible.
So snowplows were a big concern in terms of just kind of turning vehicles over and getting them outfitted on a regular basis, but they've been through that before in terms of leaving certain equipment on the vehicle and retaining some and getting it remounted, as well as city logos and decals.
Yeah, and that's a great point. We're going to analyze this so in depth that we're going to look at it from a vehicle by vehicle basis, right? And some of these units will transfer some of the equipment. So for example, Unified Government, they do a plow mount, the light bar up top, the toolbox in the back, and they sell all of that equipment as is, but they transfer the plow from truck to truck, right? Same with some of our utility beds, dump bodies. We're going to figure out what makes sense for that department and that team, how long that process is going to take, what the cost of that transferring the equipment is. We're analyzing all of that. And that's really just where the relationship structure comes in place. We have a massive amount of people at our corporate office that's all they do. We have teams for license and titling, logistics, aftermarket, resale, absolutely everything that you can think of. But here locally, we're going to bring that to their tables and really connect the dots on your behalf.
I've got a couple questions. I don't know if they're for staff or not, but I see that the fleet budget in some years is significantly below what we've traditionally budgeted, but there are like 3 or 4 years where it's significantly above what we've budgeted. So what is what's the funding source when we have a year that's going to be like, 950,000 as opposed to, 8 something? I mean, I guess we know about it far enough in advance. How would you anticipate?
One of the things we've talked about is basically treating this like a fund and setting aside those savings in the good years to smooth that out, much like the conversations we've had about
Okay.
other accounting items. So As we kind of develop a schedule and have a sense of how this is going to play out, our intention would be to try to smooth that out so that we aren't getting.
So
hit
that
with
one year we
highs and
don't say,
lows.
oh my gosh, yeah,
Right.
okay. And then, God forbid this happens, but what happens if Enterprise goes out of business? Where does that leave us? I mean, I guess we have a certain segment of our vehicle fleet that's been upgraded at that point, but where does that leave us? And I'm just, yeah.
No, we've had a lot of conversation, more so the scenario I threw out to them is somewhere out in the future, we decide we want to get out of this
That
program.
was
Not
my
so much
question.
the
If
enterprise goes out of.
We find out
Yeah.
this isn't working correctly. How do
Right.
we
So
unwind the relationship?
We've spent a lot of time vetting that termination cost. And I don't know if Ken wants to start or Jacob, but we've looked at that long and hard.
Yeah, and a lot of different conversations there. One, from an enterprise perspective, we do not see that happening. We're in a very strong position. We've got over 630,000 vehicles on lease just on the fleet management side. We do not expect that to happen. The rental market, there's a very, very strong demand, as you may have heard in the news here recently. So for the foreseeable future, we do not see that happening. Another piece, going back to your first question, a lot of our entities are building a vehicle replacement fund, as Mike kind of mentioned there. And really the benefit of that is that all of the money from the equity that when we sell these vehicles, it goes back into that fund, right? So there's a benefit to the departments to operate the newer vehicles because as they sell the vehicle, they get the equity out, it goes back to the fund and they get a new vehicle. That's one of the reasons why historically a lot of our entities are running the vehicles till they're dead, if you will, right?
Mhm.
Because if they sell that vehicle, it goes back to the general fund, right? So from that perspective, there's a lot of benefits to the vehicle replacement fund that Mike mentioned. And it also gives us a safety net, if you will, right? If we need to get out of this program year 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, and we've ran the analysis for you to show what that cost is, right? And there's a couple different options of how we get out of this program if it were to ever happen. Our goal is certainly to never allow that to happen, right? And we're going to continuously earn your business and continuously provide value. But there is an exit strategy, and we're not going to ask you to cut. We're not going to say, hey, if we don't like the program anymore, you got to write us a check for X, right?
Right.
There's what would typically happen would you would lease the vehicles until they're fully depreciated, and then at that time you would go from there, right? Then it's your asset. So there's a lot of flexibility built into this. And that's the flexible structure of this is one of the attractive pieces for our government clients, being able to get out sooner or extend longer, which it goes right into your question of how do we get out of this program?
Right. So, and in terms of, working on these newer vehicles, and I would agree, hopefully Central Garage won't have so much work to do. Who are they serviced by? Are they serviced by City of Salina staff, or are they serviced by whatever the local dealer is?
Yeah, so there's a couple different structures, and we can even break it down from a department perspective, right? Maybe the police want to outsource or the parks department wants to outsource. I don't see that being the case from the conversations we've had. And it sounds like everything will be handled internally. If you ever need to outsource a certain department or a certain segment, we have local dealerships, local vendors. There's a few different companies here in town that utilize this program. And we leverage the local vendors.
So
Yeah.
if it were something beyond, say, like an oil change or brakes, or one of the more routine things, if it was something that was like more catastrophic or had to do with the the computer or the AC or something like that,
Absolutely.
you could outsource that. We could outsource that to.
Well, one thing we
Local
failed to
dealers.
mention is there's a good chance it'll be under warranty.
Right.
But yeah, we could outsource work that either just by our own convenience or work that we couldn't do it. Vehicle damage may not be under warranty, it'd be something that we'd have to serve.
But we would anticipate doing as much work in-house as we're able to do. I think what Mike says is right. Probably most of the stuff that's bigger is going to be under warranty because you just won't have that.
Right.
They're not going to be a 10-year-old vehicle, so they'll be under warranty. I do want to say we still will have plenty of work for the guys to do at Fleet
Oh, yeah.
because this is only a portion of our fleet. So all of the bigger, all the trash trucks, all of the dump trucks, all of the bigger stuff, we are still going to have to do, and all the smaller stuff as well, your lawnmowers, we're still going to have to do maintenance on those things. And actually, it should increase our capacity to be able to service those vehicles and hopefully allow them to last, longer than maybe they typically would.
What kind of warranties are we looking at? Is that something that just varies from product to product or manufacturer to manufacturer? Or is it something that enterprise does?
Yeah, so all of the manufacturer warranties get passed through to you. So if it's a Ford pickup, a Ram pickup, a Chevy pickup, whatever it be, that all gets passed through to you. We do have a full maintenance program where enterprise essentially is fixing your costs and we cover no matter what happens. But in this case, we're not talking about that maintenance program, as everything's going to be done internally.
I do want to mention one other thing that I don't think that we hit on. Our intent, at least the staff's intent, is if we move forward with this plan, we don't plan to have any kind of standardization. So our plan would be to sit down with enterprise and say, okay, this year F-150s make the most sense for the city of Salina. We're buying F-150s, and if in 2 years it's GMC 1500 or whatever, we will plan to go with whatever we think will give us the biggest bang for the buck. So, a lot of communities seem to, we're going to buy Ford and that's it. We won't be that way. You may see Fords, you may see Chevys, GMC. You're going to see whatever is going to give us the most bang for the buck. Outside of police vehicles, we probably will stick with the same police vehicles, the Interceptor, the Ford Interceptor models. And so we will standardize those a little bit, but it makes more sense to do that because of the equipment and how you can transfer that from vehicle to vehicle. So I think that's the only thing.
To build on that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That just brought up one other question. If we're going to be turning these vehicles faster, obviously they're going to need to be marked. Is that a relatively inexpensive thing where you just do like a vinyl wrap or something, or a vinyl decal or?
Yeah, we'll still decal the vehicles. Yeah. Probably pretty similar to what we do now. Right now, it's just a pretty small sticker on the door. We'll do the same.
Okay,
thing.
but that's not a big expense in terms of.
One thing that came up in passing, as we talk to departments, if it needs an alternator to run a piece of equipment, that's a customized item. If it needs towing capacity, that type of thing. But it may be that enterprise recommends that there's options to get added for resale value. So we may, rather than a bare bones vehicle, it may have power windows and other features just in anticipation of maximizing the resale value on the back end.
Yeah, and that's one of the benefits of enterprises. We're certainly not married to a manufacturer. We're going to analyze it. We're going to lay the numbers out, lay the data out, and then your team makes the decision, right? And that's year after year. We're going to analyze the incentives. We're going to analyze the resale, et cetera.
So I'm going to throw Jacob a curve, I think. But one of the other things we looked at is how we go through this selection process. If we want to go forward with enterprise, are there other vendors out there? How can we basically demonstrate to you as the governing body that there's been some type of competitive process? And I think we've got that addressed as well.
Yeah, we do. So the purchasing policy allows us to go with the state bid. And the state bid is through a company called Sourcewell. And Sourcewell, basically they do a competitive process for fleet management. There's probably 7 or 8 companies that responded to that bid. And Enterprise was the one that came to the top of the list on that. So they have gone through a competitive process that does meet the intent of our purchasing policy. So we can move forward with selecting Enterprise without sending our own RFP out or anything like that.
Well, and obviously having like a 10-year relationship with Lenexa indicates that they're pretty satisfied with your services. Have we called?
And we
some of
certainly
them?
have. We've done reference checks. Jim's called several places. I actually talked to Lenexa. Every place that we've talked to has said that they are happy with the program. They're happy with the communication that they have with Enterprise, and they have all to a T said that if they had it to do again, they would do it again. So very good references. And we called, actually, I think the police chief called somebody after we had called everybody just because he wanted somebody that specifically dealt with police vehicles, and he kind of got the same glowing review that everybody else got. So we were very satisfied with the conversations that we had. Everything that Ken has told us for those places, as far as fuel savings, maintenance, has been seems to be the truth. So
What a glowing.
Yeah, I mean, it's real.
So, Mary, your prior question about kind of that exit strategy and cost is one that we spent a lot of time on. And in fact, we tasked them, they made a 1-year analysis and then they did an extended analysis. And that the number changes over time depending on the status of the fleet. And as Ken said, you can kind of ride out those leases, but you then have to be able to make the lease payments and replace vehicles at full price. And so there would be a cost bump there. And the other thing that we asked them to quantify was just full buyout cost at any given year. If we just say we're done, and at its peak, it looked like about $2 million. And we're talking about,
And that's in the first 2 years.
Right.
It's pretty high, and then it starts to go down pretty quickly.
So we're talking about approximately $1 million a year right now. If we somewhere out in the future said we want to make a change, we would have to find a way to free up the funds to make the transition, but it didn't seem insurmountable.
One quick question, Ken, have you had anyone that has left your fleet management program, and if so, why?
Not since I've been here in the government space. I've been here 6 years.
I'm speculating a little bit, but I think a larger organization may take on fleet management itself. And we've, in fact, I got to give John Dewar credit. His reaction was, I can do this. I'll do this for you. And it's just, I don't know how much time it would take a staff person to be monitoring all those vehicles and making all the arrangements for purchase and resale and those type of things. I don't know that we would ever grow large enough to say that we could do this level of management in-house, but that seems like a possible scenario to me.
All right. Anything else from staff?
Yeah, I don't think there's any additional information, but if the commission, feels comfortable, if this is a program that we might be interested in, we will prep it for an actual meeting and go through the process of entering an agreement with Enterprise. There will be some initial costs on the front end to kind of get things going. We think that we can handle those or cover those costs with the money from the sales tax fund that wasn't spent during the COVID 2020 timeframe. We kind of put everything on hold. So that kind of helps us to have a little bit of cash on the front end that we can help get into these lease payments. But if there's consensus among the commission, we'll bring this back as an action item here in the next couple of weeks. We'd really like to get going on it because of the cycles for the new vehicles are starting to come up and we want to get on the list.
How many years, just off the top of your head, how many years would be gained on the CIP, our usual way of purchasing? To where we really want to?
Well, in the current model, I don't think we'll ever be where we really want to.
I think
Frankly.
Yeah, I think Enterprise's projections was 16 years or 17 years before we ever got to the point where we would replace our entire fleet. So I think that's probably pretty close.
And that's just based on the current acquisition rates.
Right.
So one of the things that I do want to point out to you, the county discussed this approach. Staff took it to the county commission. And I do believe that they got some resistance from local car dealers that they felt like this was local business, that they wanted an opportunity. And I think the county went through what they called a request for information process. And it appeared to me that we kind of had a disconnect between fleet management and local car dealers' willingness to sell you vehicles or lease you vehicles that we might want. To me, it's more about the expertise that comes in the fleet management side of things than just leasing versus purchasing vehicles. But just wanted to forewarn you that I think the local dealership communities already had this conversation once, and there has been some resistance.
Were they willing to meet the price?
Well,
You don't have to answer.
right.
that.
And not having been right in the middle of that whole process, I'm probably not informed well enough to say, but I do think from what I saw, it looked like you had Enterprise and other vendors that specialize in this responding on a fleet management approach, and then local dealerships responding on a submit us your specs, and we'd be happy to lease you a vehicle.
And if we don't go through a program like this, we're going to be in the same situation where we're getting 6 to 9 vehicles a year. So we're, whereas this turns over the entire fleet, and there's nobody out there that can offer that
Right.
locally.
And I will add there, when we deliver these 76 vehicles, if you will, for the first year, those dealerships in town, whether it's GM, Ford, Chrysler, if you will, they get a courtesy delivery fee. So we try to keep them in the loop as much as possible. Same from a maintenance perspective, the warranty work, our maintenance programs do leverage the local folks as well. So we try to keep them in the loop as much as possible. And we will be delivering these vehicles to them. They still get to get that fee and deliver the vehicles, et cetera. So we do know that's important. And it's from as Jacob mentioned, if we're acquiring 6 vehicles this year with 2 different dealerships, but now there's 76 vehicles being delivered to those 2 different dealerships. Typically, there's more cost advantage to that dealership to go through this structure anyways, right? And with the current model that we have and having that 1-year model, 2-year model in there, there's always going to be vehicles going through those dealerships consistently. So we try to keep the local folks involved as much as possible consistently.
So is there consensus on the commission that we should proceed with this?
I agree.
Yeah, same here. So
Yep.
thank you very much, Mr. Olson.
Absolutely.
Appreciate all the work that you've put in on this.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for having me.
Thank you. Is there anything else we need to do further to proceed with enterprise?
Not at this time. Staff will staff it through and bring it back.
All right, thank you very much. Well, we will reconvene at 4. All right. Thank you and welcome to the Salina City Commission meeting for Monday, May 24th, 2021. As I call the meeting to order, I'd like to request staff confirmation that the Kansas Open Meetings Act required notice has been properly provided.
Yes.
All right, thank you. We'll proceed with roll call.
Mayor Hodges,
Here.
Commissioner Davis,
Here.
Commissioner Hoppick,
Here,
Commissioner Ryan.
With that, if you are able, please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty. Thank you. Right, and we get to proceed with something exciting and a little out of the ordinary today, item 2.1.
Do I have to state it or can I just go ahead and?
You know, that's a great question and probably something that I should have worked out with you and staff before. First of all, item 2.1 is Mr. Aaron Peck has been selected to serve out the term of former Commissioner Rod France's time in office. And I just want to say that we're delighted to welcome back Salina's 110th mayor, and I believe the youngest mayor, Aaron G. Peck. Mr. Peck served as mayor from April 19th, 2010 through April 18th, 2011. And yes, he will still be the youngest member of our governing body. Mr. Peck is a lifelong resident of Salina, Kansas. Along with his wife, Michelle, he owns and operates Blue Terra, a commercial weed control service, as well as Salina's beloved Bell Christmas Tree Farm. They have 2 children, Adia and Noah. The Peck family's longtime history in Salina, his perspective as a small business owner, and yes, his youthful perspective will be great additions to the commission. Welcome, Aaron, and thank you for being willing to step up and serve Salina. And with that, we'll go ahead and do the oath of office.
Sure.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Kansas
and the Constitution of the State of Kansas,
and faithfully discharge the duties
and faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of City Commissioner
of the office of City Commissioner
in and for the city of Salina, Kansas.
in for the city of Salina, Kansas.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, and you can take your seat.
Thank you.
All right. Delighted to have you. Thank you. All right. We'll start with awards and proclamations.
Item 3.1, the first Friday of June, 2021, is National Gun Violence Awareness Day in the city of Salina. Christy Newting will read the proclamation.
If you could come forward to the podium, thanks.
and I'm guessing you'll need to pull that down after Mr. Peck used it.
Good point. Good point.
Thank you for doing this. 2021 proclamation declaring the first Friday in June to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day. This proclamation declares the first Friday in June to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day in the city of Salina to honor and remember all victims and survivors of gun violence and to declare that we as a country must do more to reduce gun violence. Every day, more than 100 Americans are killed by gun violence alongside more than 230 who are shot and wounded, and on average, there are more than 13,000 gun homicides every year. And Americans are 25 times more likely to die by gun homicide than people in other high-income countries. Gun homicides and assaults are concentrated in cities, with more than half of all firearm-related gun deaths in the nation occurring in 127 cities. And cities across the nation, including in Salina, are working to end the senseless violence with evidence-based solutions, and protecting public safety in the communities they serve is a mayor's highest responsibility. And whereas mayors and law enforcement officers know their communities best, are the most familiar with local criminal activity and how to address it, and are best positioned to understand how to keep their citizens safe. And gun violence prevention is more important than ever as the COVID-19 pandemic continues to exacerbate gun violence. After more than a year of increased gun sales, increased calls to suicide and domestic violence hotlines, and an increase in city gun violence. In January 2013, Hadia Pendleton was tragically shot and killed at age 15. And on June 4th, 2021, to recognize the 24th birthday of Hadia, born June 2nd, 1997, people across the United States will recognize National Gun Violence Awareness Day and wear orange in tribute to Hadia Pendleton and other victims of gun violence and the loved ones of those victims. And the idea was inspired by a group of Hadia's friends who asked their classmates to commemorate her life by wearing orange. They chose this color because hunters wear orange to announce themselves to other hunters when out in the woods, and orange is a color that symbolizes the value of human life. And anyone can join this campaign by pledging to wear orange on June 4th, the first Friday in June in 2021, to help raise awareness about gun violence. And by wearing orange on June 4th, 2021, Americans will raise awareness about gun violence and honor the lives of gun violence victims and survivors. And we renew our commitment to reduce gun violence and pledge to do all we can to keep firearms out of the wrong hands and encourage responsible gun ownership to help keep our children safe. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Mayor Melissa Rose Hodges of the City of Salina declares the first Friday in June, June 4th, 2021, to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day. I encourage all citizens to support their local community's efforts to prevent the tragic effects of gun violence and to honor and value human lives.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nuding. In addition to wearing orange on June 4th, are there any other activities that are planned in the community that we should be aware of?
We are going to finalize we're doing a 3-week Friday Zoom call, of course, with the NAACP, the League of Women Voters, who are actually the sponsors of this talk. It's a community conversations on gun violence and gun safety, and the faith community. It's also sponsored by the Kansas Interfaith Action Group. Where would be the best place? Oh, I'm sorry. If you could come forward, please. We can't hear you because of the folks at home can't hear you because of the audio. Hi, Corey. So where would someone go to get information on those Zoom calls?
There's a registration link on the KSAL site.
Okay.
Is one place.
Okay. Oh,
That's
all.
probably the easiest place to find it. There are
Okay.
some flyers around,
Okay.
and there's also a lot of Facebook postings with the link to the series. If you go to the TIFA page, if you go to the League of Women Voters page for all these Salina groups.
Okay.
And Moms Demand Action, you can go to any of our Facebook
Yeah.
pages. We're everywhere.
And the
And-
Salina NAACP.
Awesome. Well,
Find
thank you very
information.
much for being involved in that conversation and ensuring that this conversation stays in front of us. And I would encourage everyone to wear orange on June 4th at a minimum and hopefully participate in your conversation.
Oh,
So if you'd like to
be
come
great.
forward and get your.
Thank you very much.
Item 3.2.
Item 3.2, the month of June 2021 as LGBTQ+ Pride Month in the city of Salina. Clinton Walker, Chair, Equality Kansas of North Central, will read the proclamation.
Mr. Rocker.
Hi. In recognition of June 2021 as LGBTQ+ Pride Month, whereas June is lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer plus LGBTQ+ Pride Month across the United States. And whereas even though the struggle for LGBTQ+ equality is making progress Throughout much of this nation and the world, it is still a fact that in the state of Kansas, LGBTQ plus individuals can still be fired from their jobs, denied housing, and refused public accommodation just for being LGBTQ plus. And whereas being out and visible is the most important action members of the LGBTQ plus community can engage in to provide positive role models and support to both young and older individuals who may be struggling with their sexual orientation or gender identity. And whereas LGBTQ plus citizens contribute to the fabric and expression of diversity within our community, LGBTQ plus community members work alongside other Salina citizens in places of employment and contribute to the success of employers and businesses, and donate their time, talent, and labor to community organizations. And whereas the LGBTQ plus community in Salina has organized to fight discrimination and support fairness and has taken an active role in bettering this community for all individuals, including the LGBTQ plus population. Now, therefore, I, Melissa Rose Hodges, Mayor of the City of Salina, do hereby proclaim the month of June 2021 as LGBTQ plus Pride Month in the City of Salina, and I urge every citizen of Salina to join me in celebrating the diversity and character of our community and highlight the importance of the LGBTQ plus citizens in our community in making this city a safer and more welcoming community for everyone.
Thank you so much, Mr. Walker. Aside from bringing awareness and recognition for LGBTQ plus Pride Month, are there any events that you're aware of that are going on in the community?
Equality Kansas isn't doing anything this year. COVID kind of put a
Right.
wrench, but I believe there's another group
Okay.
that is doing something.
Okay.
And they have posted, I believe, on the Best of Salina
Okay.
Facebook page.
Great. Well, thank you so much for all the hard work
Sure.
you put in on with Equality Kansas. All right, Citizens Forum. Citizens Forum is the opportunity for any citizen to come forward and speak on any item that's not on the commission agenda today. So with that, I will invite anyone who's here that would like to speak at Citizens Forum. And I'm not sure if we have anyone who's attending virtually who would like to speak at Citizens Forum. But if you would, please raise your hand virtually and let us know, and we will get you unmuted. I'll look to the folks in the room first. Is there anybody who would like to speak?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Chad Farber here in Salina. Welcome, new Commissioner Peck. Good to have you with us today. Good to see all of your faces, most all of your faces up there today as well. I know, no, not that I'm not happy to see all of your faces. There's one that's missing.
I'd be more than happy to share my horrible virus with you, but I think you
No,
probably don't want me to do that.
I'll stand
so
back here.
thank
Thank you. I just wanted to bring up, I know there's been a lot of discussion over the last couple of weeks about the housing situation here in Salina. And it's gotten to a point where it's more than just a problem, it's becoming an emergency here in Salina. So I know you guys are discussing the RHIDs and different things like that. But I would encourage you to use that term, time is of the essence. We need to be almost in an emergent phase to start working on some of these things. I love seeing the new jobs coming into Saline County and into Salina. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful thing for our area. However, we need some place for these people that are coming, these families that are coming to live and to have a place of dwelling. I love the entertainment aspect. I love what we've done downtown. But if I could encourage, and I'm sure you are behind the scenes, but I encourage you, keep pushing forward and as soon as possible, try to get some housing going on. As a realtor here in Salina, it is very difficult to find housing for people. Those who own properties here in Salina are reticent to sell their property because there's not a lot of inventory out there, and because housing prices are so drastically higher than where they were a year or two ago. Yes, they'd get a good return out of their investment when they sell, but they also have to have some place to move after they sell that property. So keep pushing on that. I know there's a lot of behind the scenes going on, but keep pushing. And thank you guys for hearing me again today.
Thank you, Mr. Farber. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak today?
Norman Mantle, Salina, Kansas. If you want to see economic benefit in Salina and or the state of Kansas, we need to see about raising our wages in this state. 3 years ago, I called Kellogg's. I seen the piece in the news. And I says, I live in Kansas. And I says, I see in the paper that you're paying your workers $28 an hour to make Frosty Flakes. Is that right? She says, yes, it is. I called Kellogg's. So if you want to attract business, if you want to attract people to Kansas, to Salina, you need to pay your workers more wages. It's in the news about they can't hire anybody to go to work because of the COVID issue. That ain't the issue. The issue is we're not making enough money. The workers are not making enough money. In 1966, I bought a new Charger for $3,200. I was making $3 an hour here in Kansas. $3,200, $3. That Charger now is $43,000. And that was just a line assembly work I was doing. These people in the assembly line work are only making $13, $14 an hour out here at Tony's Pizza. It's wrong. We would see such an economic benefit if these workers were paid more money. People don't want to come to Kansas because you won't pay any wages. So these corporations, companies, you better pay your workers more money. Even Amazon, they had a union drive at Amazon and it didn't pass, but the owner of Amazon, what's his name? I forget his name right now. He says, yep, we're going to have to pay our workers more money. If you want to attract worker bees, you're going to have to pay them more money.
Thank you, Mr. Mantle. I definitely think that's part of our conversation in attracting people to fill those new positions that we have. Are there any other citizens who would like to speak here today? And if not, I will go ahead. Nobody has their hand raised virtually? Okay. All right. We don't have any public hearings or items scheduled for a certain time, so we'll proceed to the consent agenda. Are there any items that a commissioner would like to have removed from the consent agenda? No. All right. Do we have a motion? Oh,
Okay.
sorry. I got ahead of myself again. Giovanna, I'm not going to
Wanna
make it
read 'em?
through an entire meeting without messing something up.
Item 6.1, approve the minutes of May 17, 2021. Item 6.2, authorize the mayor to execute the submission of a grant application on behalf of the Salina Fire Department to the Dane G. Hansen Foundation in the amount of $34,191.25 for an advanced live fire training prop. Item 6.3, approve resolution number 21-7961, authorizing staff to submit an application on behalf of eligible local recipient agencies for the 2021 Kansas Emergency Solutions Grant Program.
Thank you. That's a lot better. Now we know at least what we're going to be dealing with. Are there any items that a commissioner would like to remove?
Yeah. I don't really want to remove 6.3. It's not, my question wouldn't affect my vote one bit. I was
Do you
just,
want to go ahead and ask the
it's
question?
just, we were talking about homeless in the downtown plazas. Are we as a city or the downtown agency any closer to a cohesive homeless or approach to homelessness in the downtown?
There, as
Or
part
the
of
whole city,
COVID,
actually.
there were homeless funds that the county was able to use for homeless sheltering. And so they've stood up a program. Doesn't necessarily mean every homeless person takes advantage of it or wants to take advantage of it. So on the service provision side, we've been looking at that as well as there's a lot of service providers already in the community And there's also a working group, kind of a task force of Salina Downtown Inc., looking at the issue of homelessness, both from a services as well as kind of a codes and enforcement standpoint. And representatives of the Development Services Department and the Police Department are participating in those conversations. So I think there's productive conversation going on about additional approaches that we might be able to take, but I don't have anything new or news breaking to share at the moment.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? Is
I move we approve the consent agenda.
there a second?
Second,
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented. Could we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Hoppick,
aye.
Commissioner Peck,
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan,
Aye.
Mayor Hodges.
Aye. That motion passes 5-0. Item 7.1.
7.1, second reading, Charter Ordinance Number 40, exempting the city of Salina from the provisions of KSA 12-1697 and providing substitute and additional provisions on the same subject relating to the promotion of tourism and convention, authorizing the levying of a transient guest tax by cities and repealing Charter Ordinance 35.
Thank you. Charter Ordinance Number 40 was passed on first reading on May 17th, 2021. Since that time, no comments have been received. Are there any questions or comments from the commission?
Nope.
Are there any questions or comments from the public? That'll bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor Hodges, I move we approve Charter Ordinance number 40 on second reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve Charter Ordinance Number 40 on second reading. Could we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Hoppick,
Aye.
Commissioner Peck,
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan,
Aye.
Mayor Hodges.
Aye. That motion passes 5-0. Item 7.2.
Item 7.2, approve resolution number 21-7965, amending the City of Salina classified pay plan to add a new classification to the wage/salary schedule and Salina Media Connection agreement discussion.
Thank you. Mr. Wood.
Mayor and Commissioners, Jacob Wood, Deputy City Manager. Over the last couple of years, the City Commission has had several conversations about the service agreement with Salina Media Connection. And on April 26, the commission decided to bring the operation of recording and casting meetings, public meetings in-house. So in order for us to be able to do that, we need to hire a new employee. Resolution number 21-7965 authorizes that additional employee to be hired. The personnel costs related with this position will range from $59,000 to $86,000. The overall cost of the operation is expected to cost between $100,000 and $120,000. Staff is recommending at this time that the cost be taken from a portion of the cable franchise fee that is currently being allocated to Salina Media Connection. We haven't really identified another funding source if the commission doesn't want to do that. Salina Media Connection currently receives 40% of the cable franchise fee, which is about $220,000 annually. Based on the decision a couple of weeks ago to bring the recording and casting in-house, we have sent a notice of termination of the current agreement to Salina Media Connection. That agreement runs through June 30th. We're prepared to take over the operation of the recording and casting of those meetings here in this room as of July 1st. We've worked with Eagle Communications. They're going to help us to set the system in place, and they will also manage the recording and casting until we're able to actually get an employee hired. So that's kind of the first part of this, is that we need to pass a resolution that will allow us to hire a new employee. The second part of this discussion is about the agreement with Salina Media Connection. So currently we've given them notice that we're going to terminate that agreement with an anticipation that we may renegotiate that. And I think at the last commission meeting, we kind of indicated, or the commission indicated, that they might be interested in funding a Salina Media Connection at a lower level. So we really need some direction from staff, or from commission to staff, before we renegotiate about how much the commission might be interested in funding Salina Media Connection. Once we have that, we can go back to them and kind of try and figure out what it is that they might be able to provide for those funds. We'd also like to know if there's anything specific that the commission is interested in us introducing or putting into that agreement. We've reworked the agreement several times over the last couple of years. If there's something specific the commission wants to see, that's something we'd need to know or like to know. I did attach the current agreement, and I redlined all the language in that agreement that has to do with the city meetings. So those are things that we obviously wouldn't expect them to do moving forward. The rest of that language is in there just so you can see what it is that we currently have them do outside of city meetings. So today, the options that you have are to approve or postpone or deny the resolution that would allow us to hire a new employee. And then we'd also just like some direction on how you'd like us to move forward with the agreement with Salina Media Connection. And I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Wait, are these two joined at the hip as far as the action we're taking, or is the action we're taking just for the hiring of the new, creating the new employee?
So the action will be approval of that resolution. If you approve that resolution, then we'll go through the process and we'll start to get somebody on board. I guess where it's connected at the hip is that we don't have a funding source outside of those dollars that we're currently sending to Salina Media Connection to fund that part of the operation. So the intent or staff's recommendation is that we would take the money that we're currently sending to Salina Media Connection and use that to fund the operation that we're not requiring Salina Media Connection to do anymore, if that makes sense.
So if I had suggestions for the second half of what you wanted to achieve, those would be outside of the realm of this action?
I
or-
think we would take that now because
that
at this
now.
point, we really need to get back with Salina Media Connection and kind of know where it is that the city commission stands as far as funding. If you were to tell us tonight that you think we need to fund them at the full $220,000 level, then we're going to have to go back to the drawing board and kind of figure out how we're going to fund this position. If you say you want us to take that $120,000 out of Salina Media Connections funding and you want us to continue to give them $100,000, then we'll start that as the basis for the negotiation for the new contract upcoming.
Okay, and doing the simple math, if 40% is 220,000, I'm assuming their total franchise income is around 550,000? Or is that
That's
close
correct.
enough? Kind of around there?
Mhm.
Okay. And are those monies, when they go to the general fund, are they earmarked for anything particular? Or it's just,
They're not. There is no requirement or nothing in the franchise fee says that we have to spend that money any particular way. It just goes to the general fund.
okay. Right. I have suggestions for the second part of it, but we can, I guess, do the discussion on the first part first.
Okey-doke. Okay, so we'll focus on the position description, compensation first, and then we can move to a discussion about potential funding of Salina Media Connection.
I'm comfortable with how staff's worked through that and the estimates of the expense and their recommendation to reduce the funding congruently, in the amount that the city's going to have to spend. Are we confident that Eagle Communications can pick this up? Are they practiced? I assume they're using our equipment and they're not familiar with it.
Yes, they will be using our equipment and we're working through all of that right now. We had Cox on site. As you may recall in previous discussion, so all of this feed goes across the street and it goes through equipment out to the Cox channel. And there was some concern about bringing one channel over and not the other and how that would work. We've since worked that through with Cox and they are able to take the equipment that's at Memorial Hall right now that just streams Cox Channel 20 and they'll bring that across the street. We'll get it connected. We will have to buy some additional server space. There's some other just technical things we'll have to do, but right now Cox and Eagle are working through that with us. So we are confident that we'll be able to stream that moving forward.
And the present agreement is agreed to by all the parties. Would the reworking of it just take out the redlining, or are there some of those other benchmarks that were put in when it was renegotiated in January that have to do with providing information to us on different?
Well, that's a good question. So when we reworked this the last time, we put in all of the reporting requirements were put in place, and most of that was done, I think, in order to kind of gauge the viewership of the content that they have going out. There's really no way to tell how many viewers are watching their programming on Channel 21. So we wanted those reports because we wanted to know how many people are actually viewing, and we do have those things. I have reached out to Salina Media Connection. If there is, different reporting or a different way that we can do that, we certainly can. If the commission isn't concerned with that, we wouldn't necessarily have to have them provide all of those reporting requirements. That's really something that we can work through depending on how much it is that the commission wishes to see. I mean, I'll be honest, my main focus up to this point has been how do we get a good quality product out of the commission meetings? And the other stuff we haven't really, we've kind of just let Salina Media Connection do what they need to do on the other content. We don't really monitor that. We don't have any guidelines for what they do on that side. With the exception of, we require them to have local content from 6 to 10 p.m. on Channel 21. That's really the only requirement that we put in place. And we can certainly keep that if there's if the commission has an idea about something additional or more that we would want to put in there, we can certainly do that. I think one of the key points is if we reduce their funding, we really need to talk with them and figure out what it is that they can do with that amount of money, or if they have an option to replace some of the funding in other ways. I mean, I just don't know what it is. If we say we're going to give them $100,000, I think we have to have the expectation that they're only going to be able to do $100,000 worth of content or whatever that is, if that makes sense.
Commissioners, I had a couple of things. Those performance measures have been tweaked over multiple versions of the agreement with the intent of creating some measurable metrics for you as the governing body to assess as you reconsider entering into an agreement with them to, as frankly, determine how much value they provide. And so if those are helpful, historically having given you that information, we find that helpful, we can certainly keep them. Staff has continued to have conversations about what data is available and what metrics might be helpful. The only other thing that we've come up with recently is, we could either require Salina Media Connection, or we ourselves could conduct a methodologically sound survey of the community to get a sense of how many people subscribe to Cox, of those subscribers, how many view the videos. And, it's not just Cox, they do have a YouTube channel. And so they are able to report viewership numbers for that. So that's about the only thing that we've come up with in addition to the metrics that are already in the agreement. The other thing that I would tell you is, this trend, it's been a long transition. I, off the top of my head, can't tell you how long ago the funding initially changed for Salina Media Connection, but there's always been a conversation about trying to identify a revenue source other than franchise fees from the city, whether that's funding, kind of a PBS approach to fundraising drive, to donations, to program services that they can provide for a fee, whether that's programming and editing, and they do cover the Liberty football games, and they I think have made some commercials for different businesses and things like that. But Jacob is correct. The vast majority, if not the full amount of their funding, is pretty much city funding. So our expectations probably do need to sync up with the funding level.
I guess first of all, I thought we were going to discuss these in two parts.
Yeah,
And then we kind of went down that road.
Yeah.
I'm okay with the resolution as far as the pay range and the position of the multimedia specialist. So
okay.
I'll make those comments. I'll
Yeah.
tell you that I'm okay with that, and then I'll
Okay.
discuss what I think needs to be done. I think that was the question you
Yeah,
asked. So
yeah,
so.
it is. Commissioner Peck, any questions? Okay. By adopting the resolution to add this position, does this mean that pay range is in concrete? Like, if we have the ideal applicant that can't accept 59,946, but could do 62.5, I mean, is this something that we're going to be providing HR and staff with enough leeway that you could have the ability to get your ideal candidate? Or is this just is this an absolute?
We have discretion within the range. I don't know that we have independent discretion to exceed the top end of the range.
Because I think my question this is going to, this isn't going to be obviously a 9 to 5 job. This is going to involve a lot of evening work and a lot of kind of on the fly troubleshooting. And that's where I was a little bit concerned because from our previous discussions, both in the strategic planning session and just ongoing over the last few years, we've talked about the increased emphasis that we want to put on, on our programming, our social media visibility, really working hard to connect with citizens. And I guess I would just want to make sure, I feel bad about already, raising the threshold for the position salary potentially, but that's going to take a lot of diverse talents in terms of being able to do the technical side, the creative side. And I would hate to see us be hamstrung by somebody who could do it for close to that, but not
Right.
at that exact range.
And I'll defer to Jacob, but just to be clear, this is an additional position.
Right.
We've held off filling the public engagement coordinator position till we could figure out where we're headed with this decision. But
Right.
so this position will be supervised by the public engagement coordinator, and
Right.
some of the things that you're describing will be more on the public engagement coordinator. As far as the
Okay.
hours go, I think there wouldn't be an expectation that they're working a full 8-hour day and then covering
Okay.
meetings on top of that. We'd have to work with them in terms of schedule.
Yeah, and we did look at the pay ranges and what we have currently for IT type people, and we kind of tried to put that in a pretty similar pay range to where we would have an IT2 tech or an IT tech 2. Actually, it's a little bit higher than that. So it is in the range where we think we'll be able to hire somebody. And then the community engagement coordinator position is one level higher
Okay.
than this position.
What's the timeline for filling the position, posting it and filling it?
As soon as you, I hope I can get it. I hope I can get it posted by the end of the week or the end of next week if we get this approved today.
Okay. And my final question is, do we have a sense of what our investment with Eagle Communications is going to be in order to get them, in order to have them get this set up for the person who's going to assume responsibility?
I don't have a dollar amount. I don't think it's going to be significant. I don't think it would be even close to the city manager's purchasing authority.
Okay.
And then for actually running the meetings, if we get to that point, and we don't have somebody on board and they do the actual have somebody in the booth, they'll charge us an hourly fee and it'll just be a monthly bill. So I don't think there's going to be a real significant cost to getting that. And I didn't mention, but Cox did say there will be a fee to bring some of that stuff across the street. Right, they've estimated around $8,000, but I should have a more solid number here in the next couple of days. So they're working through that. So there certainly will be some upfront cost, hardware, software, that sort of thing.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions from the commission regarding this position specifically?
One pigback on you. I was going to ask, and I forgot to ask early. This is an ambitious job description. Can one person handle this? And when you mentioned the community, not outreach, but
Engagement.
engagement, thank you. Coordinators, okay, well, that would certainly absorb some of this, but not just for when this person is on vacation, but it's a lot of, it's sort of like the church organist, you expect them there every Sunday, and they never.
So
get it.
we'll have the community engagement coordinator, which we're rebranding that position. So it will be the multimedia coordinator is the new name for that position. And this is the multimedia specialist. Those two will work in conjunction. If we need a part-time person as well, then we will look at that. I think there's enough money in that $120,000. If we need to bring somebody in part-time to do some of that, we can do that as well. I have done the analysis on the amount of hours in meetings specifically, and even on the heaviest week, if the city commission has a 9-hour meeting and the planning commission has a 4-hour meeting, we're still in most weeks are not even going to hit 20 hours of actual meetings. So I think that we're going to be okay as far as that. And that's a really, really heavy week. So there's a lot of weeks where there's not much else going on but city commission meetings. So if we can keep the city commission meetings under 9 hours, then I think we'll be all right.
Hey.
I'm sorry.
Hey,
I apologize.
I'm looking at all these former mayors
I
and I'm
think
like,
this
I
mayor
feel
has done
I'm
a
being
Yeah.
attacked.
It's been a long time
can
since
do
we've
it.
had a 9-hour meeting.
And as our meeting's being broadcast right now, is all the work being done by Paul in the room right now? I mean, or is there
Yes.
anyone else behind the scenes who's,
No,
so
there's just one.
one person should be able to run the operation?
What will the county do?
We have offered to provide it for them. It doesn't really make sense for them to hire a person to do it because it's really only 2 hours a week for them and maybe 3 hours if they have a planning commission meeting. So we've offered to do that for them for a fee. So I've requested that they fund us at $15,000 a year, and that will help cover the cost of an employee or of the employee, and then some additional, if we need to put some money back for equipment, and because we want to make sure that we're maintaining the stuff in this room at a high level. I mean, the whole intent here is that we expand our capacity to provide the public with a good quality service, and that is going to entail, new equipment from time to time, and we want to make sure that we're planning for that in the future. So I haven't got a response from that yet, but I've been working closely with the county administrator, and I think I'll have something from him before too long.
All right, any further questions in regard to adding this position?
Does this need to be one motion when we're discussing this, the position and also our contract with Salina Media?
I think one motion for the approval of the resolution is fine, and then we can move on to that next discussion, have another motion for that, if that's, or consensus, depending on what the decision is, I suppose.
Okay. Are there any, if there aren't any further questions from the commissioners regarding the addition of the staff position, are there any members of the public that would like to speak to this issue?
Hey, Commissioner Chad Farber again. I just had a few questions. I had the same concern that Commissioner Davis had. This job description is very, very wide. And that ties in with the same comment that the mayor had about the pay scale that we are trying to this gentleman's comment earlier, we're trying to get a good quality in here, but there's a lot of times that you get what you pay for. And I understand we're bound by the budget and bound by the funding. And I think it's going to tie in with the next thing of how we get the funding with SMC work out. But I think the main concern from the public is where this all originated, the quality of product that is going out into the community. I, fortunately or unfortunately, have been in this room for many of the city commission meetings, so I'm not seeing the streaming. I can go to the YouTube channels afterwards, but it will be interesting to see the improvements that have happened over the last month or two or three. I know we had some issues when we first started with all the COVID and the Zoom and streaming. But again, for the community, I think we're looking for a quality product. And if we have to put a few more dollars into that, that's kind of where Salina needs to be going, I think. Does that make sense where I was coming from? I know we're limited by funding, but we also want to get a good candidate in that position as well. Does that make sense?
Definitely. Thank you.
And I guess my comment to that would be that by bringing it in-house, we can control that and we don't have different individuals pointing fingers at each other if we have a problem. We'll have to look at ourselves. So I think that's the part that I like. So if that position, if the salary doesn't fund a position to the extent we want it to, then we'll address that. So.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, if we post this position and we're not getting the quality or the quantity of applicants, then I think that the labor marketplace has spoken loud and clear. So,
At that point, you come back and
yeah.
ask us to change.
yeah,
Correct.
exactly. Okay.
Do we have any indication of what our weekly viewership actually is? That's probably difficult to define.
Yeah, well, I'll let Jacob take that.
So we have no indication on what's on Cox channel. I mean, we can look on our YouTube metrics and see how many people are. And I think typically for our meetings, it's maybe 40 or 50 on our channel. Maybe not even that high. I can't tell you off the top of my head.
I can give you, and this is unscientific I don't have what you call the busy, I'm not running 50 people through my office every day. But every week, I'm not kidding, I have at least 2 or 3 people who, after we've done the medical part, will say, I just wanted to ask you something about the meeting. I was watching your meeting and and they're regulars. Most of them are 72 and up. But, and they're watching, I think, pretty much the whole meeting. So there are people who appreciate being able to feel like they're part of the meeting, yet not have to
Right.
travel out.
Cox nor Nielsen do any type of tracking of viewership. And that was kind of my prior point. We might be able to develop a methodologically sound survey tool to put a finger on that. But unfortunately, that's been frustration might not be the correct word, but that's just been an ongoing issue we've struggled with for years is we don't have a way of measuring that number.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak in? I will let you know, Deborah, because I don't know when you got here. We're kind of breaking it up into 2 discussion points. The first is just the addition of the staff position itself. And then we're going to talk about Salina Media Connection funding. So I don't know if you want to speak to both or one or the other. You're welcome to speak however you'd like. Oh, but if I could have you come to the.
I did not, I haven't been doing what you've been
Okay,
doing. So
okay.
that helps me.
Okay.
I do want to talk about this Salina Media connection that I guess you're going to talk about after.
Yes, yes,
So
we will.
I can't wait. What I was
Okay.
gonna do is what the email we got from our board.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yes, I'm Ken Ritz from Salina. I'm curious, when you speak of the cost of adding a new position, are you factoring into that the cost of all the fringe benefits, including the employer's share of payroll tax and all the rest is, or are we talking about what the gross pay to the individual taking the position? Because that's especially significant if you're comparing what, in this case, what Salina Media has been getting to what you'll have to pay bringing it in-house. To make it a fair comparison, you would need to add any additional supervisory costs. I mean, there's just a whole host of areas that cost. And to make it a fair comparison. Otherwise, and to say where the funds are coming from, those have to be actual dollars. You can't say, well, fringe benefits don't count. Well, the bank won't agree with that. So anyway, that was
Yeah,
concerned.
I can't speak to like the supervisory costs, but the information that we got in our packet indicated that with all of the costs that you mentioned, withholding, health insurance, unemployment insurance, workers' comp, life insurance,
Mhm.
the gross pay or the financial commitment could be up to like $86,000 as opposed to that 59 high range that we were talking to. So I think staff has done a good job, like, getting those numbers. But in terms of like supervisory,
Right.
I don't know that we've gotten that.
But at least the hard fringes should, I would think, be added to say, just give the 2 numbers in the total, rather than just the bare bones of it.
Gotcha.
We're
Yeah,
getting down to
it-
somebody says, well, if you'll take me, I'll buy the gas.
Both numbers are in the
They're
staff
in there.
report.
We have them.
Both,
Yeah.
it's accounted for
Yes.
in the
So-
staff report.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the 59,000.
No, we have another.
59,000 is
pulled
the
blue
top
sheet.
end of the pay rate, but the staff report then includes the entire
Okay.
cost of everything that
But
you
that's
were
the staff
discussing.
report, but that doesn't go out to
Yeah,
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
So
the public.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's distributed on our website and it was
What is it?
part of
Okay.
Yeah.
the packet. It was
All right.
distributed last week.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to speak on this? Not, I'll bring it back to the commission for further questions or action.
Mayor Hodges, I move we approve resolution number 21-7965, amending the City of Salina classified pay plan to add a new classification to the wage salary schedule and Salina Media Connection Agreement. I guess.
I'm sorry, was there a second?
Second.
Second
Thank
here.
you.
Oh, down there.
We have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 21-7965. We do a roll call, please?
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Hoppick,
Aye.
Commissioner Peck,
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan,
Aye.
Mayor Hodges.
Aye. That motion passes 5-0. And now we will turn our attention to potential funding of Salina Media Connection and what the consensus is among the commissioners for that. Any questions that we have for staff on funding Salina Media Connection to continue to provide training and programming for local programming.
Well, I figured rather than ramble, I just wrote mine out, so it'd be easier. Of course, we've discussed a lot of it already, but I propose taking the concept of Channel 21, much as it was originally conceived, which would refer to the things we wanted the channel to achieve, and rebrand it into its own new identity as the Salina Cultural and Educational Channel. This channel does have the potential for regular engagement within our community for schools, colleges, universities, performing arts, entertainment, tourism, hospitality, educational programs of local origin, cultural programs of local origin, political events of local interest, and sports. I mean, all the things at least that I remember Access TV doing years ago, and that I think would make up most of our current agreement as far as what we wanted to achieve. I would think we would have a public-private partnership funded with $150,000 of funds generated by the current cable franchise fee proceeds. Just for point of reference, this is about half of what we're considering spending on baseball fields. And if you look at, the comparative value to our community, I think it's worth at least that for the potential that the TV channel offers. And it would not have to require generating a new tax or a new source of revenue. The money's already coming in for a like purpose. We can either choose to contract directly with Salina Media Connection or summon requests for proposals, for organizations that feel that they could present or provide the services that we would like to achieve. Our newly created multimedia specialist and or city commissioner could serve as a liaison to the operating board of whichever agency operates this program. The operating board of the agency would be obligated to diligently pursue additional operating funds and report regularly to the city manager or designee progress in achieving mutually agreed upon goals.
Any other questions, comments?
Commissioner Davis, I'm having a little trouble wrapping my head around that. Are you saying that we're starting a whole different kind of programming over there? We're going to disband Salina Media and reform it into the different missions?
We could choose to just contract directly with them, because obviously they're already there. There's economy. I mean, there's several economies of scale in keeping the same provider there. Or we could say, okay, we have $150,000, some equipment. Who here can give us what we want to achieve for this channel?
The agreement as it's written, as I understand it, is we don't have any influence on the programming that they choose. They pretty much decide how to run themselves.
Yeah, but we have the general categories of programming in our current agreement. I mean, we didn't say, provide, 4 high school football games and 3 debates, but there are categories, and we can create new categories. It'd be a new agreement, so we can, create new categories of expectation.
Well, I like the idea of us having more influence on the programming, but that's pretty open-ended kind of.
Well, I think that,
discussion at this
I think the
point.
types of programming, if you say, okay, look, we've got 4 universities and colleges here. We've got, God knows how many performing arts, we've got symphony, we've got, without saying, put the symphony's last spring concert on.
Mhm.
I would hope they could read between the lines and figure out what
Yeah,
would constitute good content.
if it's helpful, I think you could provide that programming structure by way of agreement. The one thing you couldn't do is infringe on free speech issues in terms of other programming that wants to be broadcast.
I do like your idea though of, and this of course would be subject to the board of the Salina Media Connection. We'll get public comment in just a second. Would be subject to Salina Media Connections Board, but I do like the idea of having a designated city commission liaison, just so we have a little bit better idea day to day, month to month on, what's going on at their organization. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Nope, go ahead and finish.
No, that was,
Yeah, I'm probably going to take the exact opposite view of Commissioner Davis. I've sat here and watched for an extended period of time how Salina Media Connection continues to have management issues, and look at the number of directors they've gone through. And Commissioner Davis, you didn't comment on potential, and that's what I keep hearing. We have the potential to do this. We have the potential to do that, and just have not seen that come through. I think when Salina Media Connection was set up back in the, was it 90s? It had its place. I think now with YouTube and a lot of the things going on, it's the reduced Cox subscribership. It's kind of lost its effectiveness. And I'm going to look at staff. Not only were we funding the 220,000, we were also funding maintenance, heating, air conditioning. We had about a $36,000 a year bill, and still would have over at Memorial Hall on top of what we've been funding them.
Yes, we do provide those services, and I don't know the number off the top.
So
of my
not
head, but
only
there
we've
is
been
added
funding at
expense.
220, we've been basically probably funding them at the 256 level. I just think as I look at as I try to look, and I agree with Commissioner Davis, I think there's a lot of people watch the government channel because it does affect their lives. I really have a hard time finding individuals that on a regular basis watch Channel 21. I think if we're looking at dollars that are going to affect the higher number of individuals in the community, I don't know if I see that going to the Salina Media Connection to continue programming on Channel 21. So I'm not even sure at what level I'd fund them at this time. I would think that the board would need to go out and maybe try to do some fundraising or come back with us. I would, at this point, probably be for completely terminating the contract and then letting them come back to us with some kind of guidance as to what they plan on doing for fundraising, what they would expect to see from the community at this time.
Mr. Peck? Commissioner Peck, do you have anything? I can go first if you
Just drop-
want.
drop my
Okay,
fire.
all right. I just had a couple of further questions. First of all, I know that in the agreement that we have with Salina Media Connection, I think it was section 11, which comes in around pages 10 to 11, and it talks about transfer of assets. The transfer of city-funded assets. Are there going to be transfers of such assets, and would that transfer in effect cripple Salina Media Connection's ability to do their work?
Well, if we continue with some sort of an agreement with them, I don't see any reason why we would transfer any assets. I think that part of the
Okay.
agreement would stay the same. I don't think that there's our plan for over here. I don't think there's anything, or
we
there's
need
not
to-
very much equipment that we would need that they already have. Most of the stuff we have, we would just purchase. I mean, there's a server over there that contains both channels information, we'll buy a new server. We're not going to try and do anything like that. So if we move forward in some fashion with an agreement, I don't anticipate we would want any of their equipment.
Okay.
If we were to terminate the agreement, then the equipment, would be ours, but I'm not sure we would have a need for it. I mean, there may be some things that we would have a need for, we wouldn't want to duplicate. But I'm certain if the commission decides they don't want to move forward with Salina Media Connection and that Salina Media Connection wants to move forward in some fashion without an agreement with the city, we could come to some arrangement on the equipment that they already have purchased.
All right, thank you. And my final question is, will there be a cost for Salina Media Connection in order to keep their channel up and running? Or is that something that Cox is willing to just go ahead and let them have, or are they going to have to acquire that channel? Or do we know?
No, so it would still be the city's channel. I mean, I think if
Okay.
they move forward, we really have to have if they move forward and they're going to continue to cast on the Cox channel, we have to have an agreement with them. The channel is ours. It's really
Okay.
the city's based on our franchise agreement. And that's the same way if it was anybody. We would have to have something in place to move forward. So if they're going to move forward in any fashion where they're putting, content out on Channel 21, we have to have some sort of an agreement with them.
I don't think Commissioner Hopper and I are that far apart. That, one of my options was to ask for a request for proposal. And, I don't think there's anything wrong, with the concerns that have been raised in the last year and a half. And I felt like an island by myself on a few occasions, but I mean, they're all justifiable concerns. There's nothing wrong asking Salina Media to submit a proposal. We might, give them, I don't know if there's a way you can give the person already with the contract the right to give their proposal first before you decide to go further or not.
In this instance, I certainly think you could. In fact, some of the difficulties staff trying to carry this water. So if we were going to proceed, that might be a useful approach.
Right.
I'd have to say that, I'm intrigued with your idea. I agree with Mr. Hoppick too, that they need to propose to us. So
Oh,
maybe,
Speak
Sorry,
in your
can you
mic.
speak into the mic?
sorry about that. So maybe that is an avenue to go down.
Yeah, I think that kind of puts it in their court. I like that idea that we terminate their contract and let them make a proposal to us and see if they come up with something we can all live with. So.
And I think it would be reasonable, and I picked 150,000. Anyone making a proposal would obviously need to have some idea of how much support we're going to give, because that would obviously influence what they could present. As far as the support of Memorial Hall, we do also give not even money in kind. I guess it's just outright support in cash dollars for the Salina Art Center and the community theater.
I agree.
And I think all worthy dollars spent. So that precedent, I think, has been set, and it's certainly a similar type of community asset.
I can say I'd probably struggle with 150 plus the costs over there. Then to me, that would be a little, with what we're going to spend in-house plus the 150, we're going to be spending, 120 plus 1, to say we'd be spending 50,000 more than we are now to get what we're getting.
Well,
So,
yeah, but I think the discontent has been that we weren't getting what we wanted. And by, we're putting a line in the sand saying, okay, from this point forward, you really have to give us what we want.
well, and I guess if I put the line in the sand, I'm a channel surfer and I watch Channel 21, and there's a lot of programs on there that are not of a good quality. They've come off of YouTube. I'm not sure I'd feel like I was getting my $150,000 out of the public channel either.
We're gonna make sure you're in the negotiating committee for the program content.
I don't think we can do program
Well,
content.
They have said that they have the ability to fundraise on several occasions,
Right.
and I'd like to hear an estimate from them about that. You know, all the dollars are valuable or that we have, and one way of looking at it is getting the most bang for your buck. And so there could be other community resources we want to invest in rather than this if there's so few people
Well, and
watching.
this should be, to advertise, promote Salina. Now, if the same programming goes out on YouTube, that's available to people all around the country. And if the cable channel is the loss leader for the YouTube channel to get the wider audience, then, I think it's okay to absorb some of that expense. But I'd like to see it really focused on our local
If
issues.
that's,
Then we're back to the
if that's the
age-old
direction we're going to
question.
give them, that their programming should be local programming, I may be a little more receptive. This morning, as I was getting ready for work, I turned to channel 21 and there was some speakers, and I can't even tell you what it was about because I couldn't hear it. And on channel 21, that's where I guess my rub comes in the fact that there's things that are put on there that really don't, and they may apply, I don't say they don't apply to Salina, they probably apply to some individuals in Salina, but it's not local programming, and it was not of a good quality.
And we can be, creative. I mean, on a Friday morning, I like to turn it on and find out what time South plays, what time Central plays, where they're playing. And that's just an example of local content, but
So
there's a creative light bulb going off. at the
no,
end of the
this
day.
is very interesting to hear, because there's an age gap, I guess. I don't know of anyone that turns that on to figure out.
Hey, I'm close to the oldest up here. I'm the same way. So
Well, now, if I knew it was going to be on, if I knew Salina High School sports came on at, probably Thursday night to get ready for Friday games. And if, Thursday night, 7:30, I can get all the updates, plans for the weekend's high school sports. I'll tune in.
Is the action most appropriate to terminate an agreement and then have them come back, or could we table this, keep things in place?
I think we have to deal with it.
Well, Jacob, correct me if I'm wrong. We've terminated the agreement. We've noticed them up. It's a real, so, and I understand the way this conversation is going, I understand the reason for your question, but I think the current agreement is terminated. The question is there an expectation we just roll into renegotiation?
Okay.
And staff came away with, based on our last 4 iterations of this, that staff's in the lead of trying to negotiate this in some way on your behalf. If we'll entertain proposals, I think that is an appropriate alternate approach. And I think any direction you can give as governing body there would be very helpful. City attorney and I had a side conversation just a minute ago, and as it relates to dictating programming, they are, there was some intentionality in terms of setting them up as a separate entity and having some independence, and we may need to sort through that a little bit, but I think if they're proposing to you in return for funding, we will do these types of programming, but they're not precluded from, whatever other programming. I'm hopeful that that's a balance we can strike. But, so far we've in past agreements been pretty explicit about we want your community in action. We want this many of them on this frequency, that type of thing. I think we're still kind of at the conceptual level. I think your conversation's productive, and if you can reach a general consensus, we'll then try to staff that through.
Staff mentioned possibility of, there might be a way to get at the metrics of what the viewership is. Is there a way, maybe there's a way of polling or something? If you've got ideas about that might be fruitful, I'd like to see us take a crack at that, because it's bugged me for 20 years
Yeah.
and nobody knows who's watching and when.
well, and I guess part of my concern is when it comes to the public channel 21 is the only individuals I've heard from, and God bless them, they are passionate people, is their board, but that's the only people I've heard from. I have not heard from anybody in the public saying we need to continue channel 21, the public access television. And about everything else we do, I get some kind of input one way or the other. So I really question the viewership.
Commissioner Ryan, in response to your question, it would come at a cost, but the Docking Institute and others can do surveys that are methodologically sound, that it's a cross-section of, demographics that's very intentional in terms of who can respond versus just an open-ended Facebook poll that you don't know what you got in the way of responses. So I don't know what that expense would be, but everything from do you watch to frequency to quality, assessments of quality and the value of the programming, that's certainly possible.
And not that this isn't an important subject, but it just seems like we have so much on our plate with staff right now. We're short staffed. I don't know how many hours we're looking at for staff to work on this when we have a lot of other things. I think that if I had to prioritize would probably come in ahead of this. So I think that's something we also need to take into consideration.
Well, a lot of this work would be done by whichever agency would be wanting to run the channel. Staff, I think, would be in the position initially of receiving a proposal.
So I guess, we've already terminated the contract. So I'm going to look to Commissioner Davis. Would you want a motion that would open up proposals to be made to the city commission in 90 days or 60 days or something like that?
Yeah, one half of that answer is a question. Is it appropriate to solicit a proposal from Salina Media Connection first, or should they all just come in at one time? I mean, we obviously would know that they've already been doing it. I mean, so it's not like they'd be strangers to it.
And I don't even know who else is out there that would do it either. So.
Yeah, we haven't staffed that question through, but I think this is more of an approach towards a negotiation than a full blown, solicitation for proposals. It's just kind of reversing the responsibility and saying,
Right.
If you want to negotiate, make a proposal to
And,
us.
little competition is not bad. I mean, I can only think of, I won't even say them out. I can only think of two other entities in the city right now that even be remotely close to being able to even make a proposal for a whole channel.
Yeah.
But I think
well, and if you
it's
look,
not unreasonable for us to put the onus on Salina Media Connection to present a tenable program that they can pull off that meets their
and I'd like to
satisfaction.
put it on them that they give us an idea of what they think their fundraising ability is. I mean, you talk about the community theater. We do fund some stuff there, but they have ticket sales, but they do fundraising. So is the art center. And, a lot of the projects we're involved in are private-public partnerships. So I'd probably be for allowing them to bring us a proposal, I guess. But I think for me to have any interest, they'd have to have some skin in the game.
And I don't want to jump across the deliberation line too much, but one possibility is some baseline funding and then a dollar for dollar match for funds they raise, so that
That's it.
that they have some skin in the game.
We do have a member of the Salina Media Connections management team and board here, and I would like to invite her to speak, Deborah Cox, before we go too much further with our discussions.
Thank you. I've been wanting to speak because some of the things that you're talking about, I'm not, well, you'll understand. I am here to, I think all of you got an email from our board chair, and however, the public didn't get that. So I'm going to read that. And then I want to kind of give you some thoughts and some things to consider and understand about Salina Media Connection, because I know most of you have been in this community a long time. I've lived in this community most of my life. I want to tell you from my viewpoint about Salina Media Connection. But let me read this. It's dated May 24th, which is today, regarding the resolution that you have just voted on, but it's about this SMC part. Dear City Commissioners, as I will be unavailable to address the City Commission at the May 24th, 2021 meeting during the discussion of Salina Media Connections, future role and city support, I am submitting the following remarks. Because the proposed resolution document was received with insufficient time for the SMC board to meet and respond, the opinions expressed are mine as an individual and not as chair of the SMC Board of Directors. And this is Nancy Klostermeyer, who is our board chair. Although the establishment of the new wage and salary classification is related to the action previously taken regarding discontinuance of SMC's coverage of city government meetings, the discussion of the city's future expectations and support of SMC in operating Channel 21 is a separate matter, warranting more determination of the impact the termination of this agreement will have on SMC's ability to move forward in meeting those expectations, as well as the important community role it will play. For example, will this action be considered a termination or a revision of the agreement? If it is a termination, are all of the provisions in the current agreement to be executed or just the items that have been redlined? Our long history, as well as desired future as a city and community access television partnership, warrants careful consideration of the potential, as well as known consequence of the pivotal change. In conclusion, it is unclear to me what impact the passage of this resolution as written will have on Salina Media Connection. It contains questions regarding SMC's future operation, which deserve in-depth consideration aside from the matter of the city personnel issue. I, therefore, respectfully request that the action you take regarding resolution number, allow for more definitive action regarding the city's new agreement with Salina Media Connection. Thank you for your consideration, Nancy Klostermeyer. So some of the things that you're talking about are some of the things that she has raised as things that need to be defined and discussed. The board has not met. She's in Alaska. We have a meeting scheduled actually tomorrow by Zoom so that we can talk about these things and discuss them. The other things that were kind of discussed is how many people watch. We don't have a way of counting a lot of that, but we know exactly how many people watch the government channel because we have counted those. And every time that we play or every time you have a meeting, we've got the numbers of who watches those. It's harder to get the numbers of who watches what we put on Channel 21 because there's not been a way devised to count that. So you guys are right about that. We don't know. But as far as surveys, for 20 years, there have been surveys done. And we're in the process of doing another survey and have gathered a lot of the information already. Greg was just kind of going over a few of those things today. The other thing about what we programming on Channel 21, we have to remember that, well, for one, we do have a lot of city programs that we invite folks over to tell us what's going on with the city, our city in action. And now that I'm up here, I'm on this, I got the spotlight on me. I can't remember all the programs that we schedule. Monthly, we schedule people to come in and be interviewed to tell us what's going on in the city government and in the city of Salina. With COVID happening, that had to stop because people weren't doing anything. We did start doing Zoom, but for a while, everybody was just kind of, how do we do this? What do we do? And then there were a couple of staff changes here. So we haven't started Your City in Action again. And there's another one we haven't actually started again. But we have pretty much continued to do those kinds of interviews with folks at United Way, other charities, other organizations, and they are shown on the channel and they are sent to YouTube. So those things are there. The one thing that we have done since we changed the management team structure, instead of having an executive director, because once again, getting ready to get that done, actually having people come visit, that's when I actually started volunteering at the station again. we ran into, it started to get kind of strange, and then COVID happened. So we formed a management team. Nancy Klostermeyer, whose expertise is volunteers, Greg Stevens, whose expertise is many things, but he's also a professor at K-State Salina, K-State Salina. And then I joined as someone who is a work counselor. What I do is I am a counselor that looks at people with disabilities, people not with disabilities, but how do we get people to work, and how do we structure their work to make sure that they're doing what they need to be doing and focusing on what they need to be focusing on. So I can tell you the management team, we don't always think alike. We don't always perform alike, but we have been making some moves in the structure and what's happening at Salina Media Connection. And one of the things that I've been able to do is develop programs. And I talked about that last time I was here. We have new programs that we are developing, and some you've seen, a couple you haven't seen, but I am going to bet almost anything that you'll want to see those two programs that are coming up. And it's going to be under the program of Conversations in Color. So just know that we're not standing still. We are looking at marketing. We are looking at fundraising. We haven't done fundraising very much because of the way the funding came and the things that we needed to do to earn the funding. And we have no problems with any suggestions, any people who want to tell us what kind of programming they'd like to see. But we are a community access television. And that means people can send us things. People can request us to show things. I will tell you, during February, we showed a program that I was totally against as an African-American. I was just like, Greg, he's like, it was requested. So you all can request whatever programs you would like to have a show, as long as they don't have bad words in them, because that's one of the problems. We will not show those things, or we'll blank them out if we can. That is what community access is. And we are involved in the community. We do graduations, and we had orders for DVDs already this morning, high school graduations. We will show any college graduations. We'll go and film them if they want us to. There are no limits in what we can cover when it comes to what's happening in the community. And we do cover as much as possible with a small staff, 6 folks. Not all of them are camera folks. Some are technicians that aren't camera folks. We are out there. Sunday, we had a 12-hour, I had a 12-hour day, and our staff had a 9-hour day. So just tell us some of the things you want to see if you haven't seen them. We'll work on making sure that those things get on if we can. If not, if you can't help us, we'll research it some, and we do a lot of research. It's not just showing things, it's also training folks in the community. A lot of the folks you're relying on to help you make this transition to handle your programming here spent time at Salina Media Connection. And they'll tell you some were volunteers, some were actually executive directors. And so it's a place where we show things, but we also train, and we also do community things. So I just wanted to make that clear. What I'm hearing you say, what you're deliberating about, we've been deliberating about since we started. And we started because government folks and community folks came together and said, we need to have a community access television in Salina. And it happened. And so things do change, time changes, media changes, and we are changing with it, even though you don't think so, we are. And if we don't live up to what you want to run the city meetings, then yes, get someone who can do what you're wanting. And if you need some help, we're there. If you think we can help, if you need somebody to help, wherever you are, not just the city, we're there. And that's pretty much all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, before you sit down, Ms. Cox. So I I talked to Ms. Cox earlier today, and my question for her, and kind of as it related to some of the earlier questions about the equipment that was going to remain with Salina Media Connection versus, what we would have transferred over here was, what is the funding that it would take to keep Salina Media Connection able to do its, its training and programming. And you indicated that that was something that was going to be discussed at the board meeting
That's
tomorrow?
something we have not had time. We just got, this information, and with some people out of the state and
Mhm.
people doing what they do, we just haven't had a chance to gather the board, and we are as soon as possible
Gotcha.
tomorrow.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. I just wanted to clarify that at this point, we don't know if that.
That's
number-
on our mind, and that is something that we're looking at. Actually, we have been looking at it for a while. So
Gotcha. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the public that are here in attendance today?
Dalton McDowell, Salina. One question. If if you don't have a contract with Salina Media, why are we still supporting their endeavors? It's kind of counterintuitive to pull that, but then still have to pay for them to continue. If I have a contract with somebody and they pull it, I don't expect them to continue to pay it. Why should we continue to pay them when we're not using their services? It's kind of ridiculous that we would waste money on them if we're not using their service.
Thank you.
Chad Farber again, and I appreciate what Commissioner Peck mentioned just in passing, an age gap. I think that is a realistic look into Channel 21. I don't have to give my age up here. I'm not asking you to give your age up here. Before the meeting 3 or 4 weeks ago, when we were discussing SMC and Channel 21 and Channel 20, I had personally never heard of Channel 21 or community access here in Salina. I have children, I have family that are in the younger demographic, and everything is YouTube. Everything is digital right now. Possibly, and you can toss this around, possibly another idea would be the new position that we're opening up and the level over it that was discussed a little bit earlier. Perhaps starting a Salina YouTube channel and have that individual run that channel. If we're looking to market Salina, if we're looking to reach that demographic of, below a certain age group, I think that would be a better investment for Salina. We're talking $250,000 is what I was hearing a few minutes ago. That is a huge investment if we're not seeing any return on that. So again, just tossing out another idea. Again, I like the term age gap, but I saw some of you guys bristle at that when a commissioner said that a few minutes ago. So I'm not going to bring it up again.
That was a wince.
Yeah.
I would like to point out though, it's not, their programming, our programming, this is the opportunity for everyone in this room to program. Dalton, this is your channel. You have special skills and talents. If you want to show folks how to take care of landscape, you could do it here. It'll go out on Channel 21. It'll go out on YouTube. But, the channel is, it's you don't get TV channels every day. I mean, it'd be something I'd want to think long and hard about risking losing. You don't have to do all the production in the studio. You can produce it nowadays on your cell phone. But there is training. And again, its mission can be whatever we want its mission to be. But, if you want your graduation, I mean, you may have a birthday party, you want video, high school sports, we kind of take for granted. Oh yeah, well, it's going to be on TV. Well, who says it's going to be on TV? Somebody actually has to go through the work of getting it on TV. So I just, we've taken it for granted because it's always been here. A lot of things that are always here, we assume will always continue to be here. And that doesn't necessarily have to be the case, but it'd be real hard to get back if it's extinguished. Certainly without trying to give it a chance.
Anybody else who would like to speak? Is there anyone available online? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off, Mr. Ritz.
Is anyone on there? Got one.
Ken Ritz again. There's an old saying, he who pays the piper calls the tune. Problem with fundraising is those who contribute often have strings attached, or the implication is that in order to get money from them, we're going to have to go a certain direction. And I would favor true public financing of a truly public station to get away from that, because it's something we really need. And I appreciate that Commissioner Davis shares that sense that to be part of the community, you have to feel at the very least that your concerns are being considered, and that your thoughts are being heard. So often it's a straight path into one ear and out the other, with very good actors in positions of all sorts, who certainly appear to be paying attention, but the results that come of that are not evident. And I miss in Salina a lot of features of the newspaper. It would be nice to have an editor to have a newspaper. Radio used to be much more open than it is now. And if Channel 21 could look out at issues, whether it's the river, for heaven's sakes, COVID-19, we had all kinds of local concerns with businesses, with who is going to cover the costs that this virus has laid upon us. The need, if we're going to close certain businesses, not because they've done something wrong, they're not responsible for creating a virus, loosing it on the population, and to tap into all sorts of skills and knowledge that we have in this community, and have it available, and have people who see that their job is to reach out and tap into the pool of knowledge and the pools of concern and the pools of ignorance, the vast levels of ignorance that we have in so many areas. And a good local channel would be a tremendous boon to that. Getting the newspaper better based back in Salina. And there are newspapers in Kansas that are truly locally based. There are radio stations. I was just amazed when I came across 100.9 in Clay Center. And knowledgeable people, concerned, considerate. And I thought, man, that's what we need. When they got a new fire chief, the lady that interviewed him, and I thought, damn, that lady
I'm sorry, Mr. Ritz, could I ask you to wrap it up?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, you may. And it went for a half an hour and I thought, yeah. And so with the way the commission spends money, $250,000 is a rounding error from the petty cash fund. But anyway, there's no question that will take some real doing. But that's, I think, what we need to do and be able to bring people together, have them be able to tune in and be a part of these things and take it from all angles. So there we are.
Thank you. Anyone else? And I don't see a hand raised online, so I'll bring it back to the commission for further questions, discussion.
I'm going to look at staff. Would it be prudent for us to just make a motion that staff work with Salina Media Connection on some type of a funding level for that they see needing from the city before we even get into programming and some of that?
Yeah.
We certainly could.
I mean, I would like for the SMC board to go back and say, okay, this is what we need if we're going to continue to be active. Here's what we think we can do, and whether it's a match dollar for dollar, we continue to pay the 30-some thousand a year at Memorial Hall. I would like to put it on them to come back and give us a number, and then we can decide if that's a number we can live with or not.
Yeah.
Right, because at this point, we don't know if it's if it's 50, if it's 150, if
Right.
it's the existing level.
Right.
Right.
So I guess with that, I'll make a motion that we move that staff work with SMC to bring a proposal to the commission as to the potential funding level for the city of Salina for continued operation of the public channel 21.
Second.
We have-
Could I ask for one clarification? Staff work, and this is semantics, but staff working with them versus staff requesting of them.
Requesting of them, I guess I
Requesting
should
of
say. I just
Thank
don't, I mean, I don't want you don't have to get into they just need to bring staff I guess a proposal.
And I don't know how I can summarize that, but I'm going to try. We have a motion that staff be directed to solicit a proposal from Salina Media Connection regarding their funding requirements. Does that sound about right?
Sounds good.
Okay. Could we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Hoppick,
Aye.
Commissioner Peck,
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan,
Aye.
Mayor Hodges.
Aye. That motion passes 5-0. All right, item 8.1.
Item 8.1, approve resolution number 21-7962, recognizing an applicant and allocating funding for the 2020 Kansas Community Development Block Grant Coronavirus.
Madam Mayor, Commissioners, thank you. Lauren Driscoll, Director of Community and Development Services. This may look familiar. We did discuss this in 2020. It was part of the immediate COVID relief packages put out. This funding came through CDBG CV for coronavirus. We were awarded $169,200 and went through the process of allocating that to sub-grantees. We had a lot of kind of processing of those applications, and in working with North Central Regional Planning Commission, learned some of the things that they learned from round one of funding, and that was to verify a lot of things up front. So our hope was that when you adopted in November 9th of 2020, Resolution 2078-98, dispersing those funds, that everybody would be good. And we were hoping really in one allocation, we get those totally spent. What we did have happen was one of the applicants come back and say, sorry, we've moved our business due to COVID outside city limits. And the funding is very particular to having to be spent inside the city of Salina. Saline County did get awarded CDBG CV funds. At the time, as we were working through this with the applicant, the county had fully allocated all of its CDBG CV funds. I did get a call today, no promises, but it looks like they also had an applicant who has now become unqualified from the county level. So they may be able to help this individual. So we are trying to reestablish that connection. When we were faced with this problem, we went back to 2 businesses that had applied and after first initially being eligible, could not continue in the application process due to having taxes in errors. So went back to those and asked, have you gotten your tax issues sorted out? Both had, but only one chose to move on with the process, and that is Ad Astra Cafe and Books. After working through them, we're working this through with them and through North Central Regional Planning Commission, helping us to go through their application material. They had originally, through their application, requested a little over $14,000. After going through all their material, they're eligible for almost $19,000. But the remaining monies that we have from the other applicant, Vivid Salon, not being able to receive funds due to their move was $9,144.81. It is staff's recommendation that we take that total remaining amount and fully allocate that to Ad Astra Coffee and Books as their CDBG CV allocation. And if you are to approve resolution 217962, which is in front of you this evening, it would do such. Otherwise, your second option would be to approve the resolution with amendments that you deem appropriate. 3 is to postpone consideration of the resolution to a specified date and give staff additional direction on how you'd like us to move forward. Or 4 is to decline resolution 217962, and we would then not move forward with allocating these funds to Ad Astra.
Any questions for staff?
Simple.
Yeah. It does. It does. Thank you very much, Ms. Driscoll.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Any questions or comments from the public? I don't see anyone with their virtual hand raised either. With that, I'll bring it back to the commission for further discussion or action.
Mayor, I move approval of resolution number 21-7962.
Is there a second? We have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 21-7962. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Hoppick,
Aye.
Commissioner Peck,
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan,
Aye.
Mayor Hodges.
Aye. That motion passes 5-0. Do we have anything under other business that a commissioner would like to bring forward? Okay. I had one quick question. I'm glad Ms. Driscoll is still here. Was there something we were supposed to produce for Marty Schukert on the housing thing in terms of like any suggestions in regards to the scoring? I couldn't read my own notes and I wasn't sure.
No, nothing formal, Madam Mayor. If any of you have additional comments that you would like to share with Marty regarding the policy framework that we discussed last Monday in the study session, those are very welcome. If you could get those to me by the end of this week, it's best if you send them to Holly or City Manager Scragg, and then those can be forwarded on to me. But if you just no particular questions, just any thoughts you had regarding that framework, because our goal is to be back in front of you 4 weeks from last week. So we have 3 weeks now with that policy.
Thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate that clarification. With that, I would accept a motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And none